Well, we're going to screw this up. Dang on, man. We can do it all. We can.
Then you play goddamn guitar.
How you doing?
Hey, podcast world. I'm Jeff Bober.
And I'm Mick Marcelino. And we're on the... What am I saying? And we're motherfucker. Google Play. Motherfucker.
And that's where you'll find us. And as always, we are always...
Oh, son of a... That should be me.
This pen, I swear to God.
It won't work then, because I'll be crying with a pen stuck out of my eye.
You're right.
Here we go.
I'll write with the back of your head. Hey, podcast world. I'm Jeff Bober.
And I'm Mick Marcelino of Amps and Axes.
That's right. And we've got a cool podcast that talks with guitarists,
manufacturers,
engineers,
and techs.
Yeah, so check us out every Saturday on iTunes
and Google Play.
That's right.
And as we're always saying,
onward.
Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show. With your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino. And it is, it's a wonderful day in the neighborhood.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's beautiful today, man.
Oh my God, yeah, and I, it's so funny. I'll give you a little bit of my personal life. I was up till 2:30 in the morning working on my car because Toyota, they do a great job on brakes, but mine had said, well, it's time to stop, and I had to wake up at 7. Yeah, no, they were stopping. So I had to wake up at 7:30 this morning, and about half an hour before we start, I had worked on the car the entire time, and I'm still not dumb. But they will be repaired, and but it's just fun times, man. Vehicles and me, sometimes it just doesn't get along.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, sorry to hear that.
That's all right. It's better than paying $1,000 to some greaseball that would, do shortcuts, and I'd end up into a Jersey wall or something. So.
Oh, we were just through that with one vehicle and about ready to go through it with the next. So yeah.
It's it's inevitable. You got to do it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Going down the road's nice. Stopping is even nicer.
It is. It is. When you push that pedal, you expect it to do something.
Yeah. And expecting it to do something that we thank you so much to the fans. You guys are spreading the word. You're showing the love. You're keeping the coal in the engine that is the Amps and Axes podcast, and we can't thank you enough, man.
That's right. And we need you and your friends, relatives, countrymen, maybe exes, neighbors, good friends to help us shovel the coal.
That's right. And when you tell them about us shoveling the coal, make sure you tell them that you heard it here first.
That's right, because today we have a coal no, we don't. But we have a first for you again today. It's a first for us, too.
I was going to say, it's a first all the way around.
It is a first all the way around. Yeah. Not that we've never met any of these types of people before, but we've never had one on the show before. So we're going to take a break for the pause for the cause, and we're going to come back with our very first interview with the drummer.
That's right.
Who is the drummer for Lou Gramm. We'll be right back with Mr. Rob Mount.
Hey, this is Michael Sterto, guitarist for Lou Gramm, and you're listening to Amps and Axes.
All right, and we are back as promised because, it's Amps and Axes and we keep our promises. Anyway, we're back with what I believe is our first non-guitarist. No, well, not only non-guitarist, musically non-guitarist, because we've had techs and engineers and producers and manufacturers and all, but a musician that is not a guitarist or a bassist.
That's right.
So That's right. We're back with our guest of the week, Mr. Rob Mount. Rob, how are you?
Hey, guys. I'm great. And just to let you know, I do play guitar, actually, but not in this band. So there, I kind of I'm a bridge. I'm a guitar player who's mainly a drummer. So how about that?
Nice. I love it because, we've said many, many times, the best guitarists started on drums because they have the best rhythm chops.
Oh, yeah.
And singers. And singers. Lou Gramm, Steve Perry, all those guys, Steven Tyler, were all drummers before they got their thing going as a singer.
Lou was a drummer. Or is
Absolutely.
a drummer. No, get the hell out of here.
Nice.
In his band Black Sheep, before they made him the singer, he was the drummer in the band, actually. So,
how about that?
Yep.
Very
there
nice.
you go.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to find out, which came first, drums or guitars, because we're going to do what we do with all our guests. And now you're a guitarist as well, so it doesn't feel so foreign to us. But we're going to take a jump in the Wayback Machine and find out where Mr. Rob Mount was born and raised and what got you into this wild, wacky, wonderful world of music, man. So give us some history.
All right. Well, born and raised here in Rochester, New York, where most of the guys in our band actually are from, including Lou. So most of us are from here. And I started playing drums when I was about 7. I started taking lessons. Before that, I would sit home and listen to my mother's Osmond records and beat on the pots and pans and pretend I was jamming with Donnie and Marie. And then so after
I love it.
After I graduated from that, I saw Kiss on the Paul Lynde Halloween special, and it just blew my mind. I was like, "Holy shit! What is that?" And
fire and blood.
Oh, it was the best. Like the older generation before us had the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and then our generation, or at least mine, we had Kiss on Paul Lynde, and that's what suckered me in, and so by then I had already been doing lessons on snare drum, and I took lessons initially from some German dude in the basement of a musical school, and he had such a freaky accent, and he goes like, "Now first we play the snare drum, and then we will play the cowbell." And I was like 7 years old, and I was like,
"Next we will goose step."
Hey, it's
freaked me out.
It's drumming by a Nazi war criminal. One thing, real quick, before we go any further, we've had many artists on here, and we've narrowed it down. There's like 3, right, Jeff? It's Elvis, it's the Beatles, and it's Kiss. Yeah. And I heard something the other day. My son read it to me. He found it somewhere. I don't know. He scours the internet like every other kid. Because Kiss is because Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, they kind of keep things very close to the vest with their financials. It is estimated the band is worth $5 to $10 billion.
Jeez.
5 to 10 billion. That would put them over every single act ever.
Yeah.
Like Madonna, Michael Jackson, the Beat, you name it. You go down the line, there's just no way anybody can come near that.
none of those other acts have an army.
Yeah, exactly. The Elvis army.
Well, they're almost.
Yeah, but they're all
you got to think of all the
walkers.
Merchandising they did. I mean, that's where they you know what I mean?
Yeah, Gene was a machine on that thing, man. I mean, and still is. He's always about making. What can he sell, and everything is Kiss. But just an amazing. That band is more worldwide probably than most. I mean, I remember. When they did and you may remember this, Rob, if you're a fan, they did their comeback with the makeup. No, I'm sorry, it was the last show that they did with the makeup before they unmasked. And it was like in Rio de Janeiro, it was like 275,000 people showed up for this show. They leveled the top of a mountain and played on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, before that, they were having a hard time. Actually, the Creatures of the Night tour was doing very poorly. But they went down in South America, where you ask anybody from Iron Maiden to anybody down in South America, those people are fucking nuts. And that was a good way to end the makeup era.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So let's get back to the
Let's get back to Rob World. Where do
Let's get back to the German.
That's right. Lessons from the German, right?
All right. Well, he didn't last very long. That guy freaked me out with the accent and all that stuff. So I stopped taking lessons with him and soon started picking up with, other people. And, I just started listening to my favorite records like everybody else does and jamming along. And I was about 14 or so when this one place I was taking lessons put together a bunch of bands made out of all the students, and we started playing like recital concerts, which is kind of my first foray into live performing, which is cool. And I still have the cool thing I always people think I'm nuts and probably Mike and all the guys in the band do too. I film and record almost everything I do, and I did even back then. So I used to bring my boombox into the rehearsal, and I've got really, really good recordings of me as 14 years old playing with the first guys I ever jammed with.
That is cool.
And to this day, I record everything I do because that's how you learn from mistakes and things like that.
That's like Dimebag.
Yeah. Well, dude, I got tapes and CDs and all sorts of shit from when I was that old. So anyways, I started getting into bands as a teenager. And at that point, I also started taking lessons for percussion at the Eastman School of Music, which is one of the more prestigious schools in the country for music education and performing. And, it's up there with the Juilliards and all that kind of stuff. When I was in high school. Now, I didn't go to college there, but I was studying throughout high school there. And at that point, I also started picking up the guitar because I always have had a good ear, for music, not in just the percussion sense. And so, I got my parents to get me a guitar, and, I quickly, got one of the first, couple of years of Floyd Roses and had it slapped on there. And the next thing you know, I was playing more guitar for quite a while than I was drums, because I started listening to guys like Randy Rhoads, of course, Eddie Van Halen and those kind of guys. And I was big time into Journey and Triumph and Rick Emmett and Neil Schon. So as a guitar player, I started learning all those songs on guitar, which later in, it's like you said, when you learn other instruments other than your own main one, you could bring that into your band situations. And it's just kind of funny to watch people who don't know me when I say you're out of tune, and they look at me like you're just the fucking stupid drummer. How do you know I'm out of tune? And I could sit there and go, why are you tuning your guitar with your chorus pedal on? You know what I mean? It's just some things like that.
Oh my God.
I'm not just a dumb drummer. So, so anyways, but I gravitated back, mainly to drums after a few years, but I would go, from one room in the music school from a guitar lesson, and I'd go into the next room for a half-hour drum lesson. So I did that for a long time. And
that's pretty cool.
I went to college here in Rochester for music education. I did it for a year, and I kind of decided I didn't want to be a music teacher. I couldn't see myself in the terms of, being a high school band lead or something like that. That wasn't, I knew that wasn't for me. So I dropped out after a year. I wanted to go jam with Ozzy. I didn't want to be fucking teaching somebody oboe or something like that. So I dropped out of college, started just doing day jobs, and I did the cover band scene like everybody else did. And what else did I do? Well, when I was 21, my big, introduction into touring was with a band that some of my friends had gotten into with some guys from California. And they had already had the band established, but they needed a drummer. And so I traveled up and down the East Coast throughout 1989, just, learning how to live off of like $70 a week on mac and cheese and freaking cheap soda and, sleeping in vans, everybody's done it. And that was kind of my,
around this time, I usually ask like a guitarist, like what was your first guitar and amp, and do you still have them? And, where did you move on equipment wise from there?
Okay.
What was it like? Okay. Tell us about the guitars that you started on, but also the first drum kit.
Okay. Well, as far as guitar goes, I still have it. It's an Aria Pro 2 that I got when I was probably 14 or 15.
I remember that company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And I had a Seymour Duncan Invader put into it because I think like George Lynch used it in 1985 or
those
something.
Those things were ridiculous. You couldn't make those things clean at all. It didn't matter what amp you played through, at what volume, and it was just literally, if I remember correctly, it was giant Allen wrench screw heads.
Yes.
It was ceramic magnets, and if I'm not mistaken, because it was so overwound, it was like 5 miles of wire.
I'm looking at it right now.
1.6 billion turns.
It was the hottest thing, like passive wise, ever. EMGs were like, that's just crazy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm looking right at the guitar now. I have it out here. It's just staring at me, saying, "Play me." But, so yeah, I still have that, and I went through a couple of different little practice amps. Here we are. I'm talking guitars, and I'm the drummer in Lou Gramm's band. But
that's good.
I have a Roland Spirit 30 little practice amp. I've had both of these for like 35 years. So
wow.
Nice. As far as the guitar end of things, well, there you go. As far as drums go, when I was about 8 or 10, my parents bought me a partial. It wasn't a complete kit, but it was an old Ludwig Sparkle kit from 1965, which I still have. And it was just a snare, a floor tom, and like a 20-inch kick drum and some really, cheesy hardware from the time. And I had a Ludwig Speed King kick pedal, which at the time was one of the better ones. And, so I had that. And then over time, I got another, like a floor tom. I got another bass drum that none of it really matched, but I just started, adding more to it because it was so basic at the time. And but when I got to be around, 14 or so, I was like, I need like real drums. These things are older than me, and so one of my big drum heroes at the time was Tommy Aldridge, who I got turned on to him when he was, with Pat Travers and then Ozzy's band.
There you
go. And he at the time when he joined, well, he'd been in Ozzy for a little while. When they started Bark at the Moon, he got a new black Yamaha recording custom drum set. And I saw that and I go, that's what I want for Christmas. So, which, even in those days wasn't cheap, but my parents, they knew I was serious. And so they bought it for me. And,
wow.
Now, was this had Yamaha come out with the isolation rings that, the mounts that are rubberized? No, not yet.
No, this was before that. This would have been, when did I get that? It would have been around 83 or 84. So when I got that, I'm not sure when they came out with what you're talking about, but it was a little bit later.
I mean, am I doing that right? Am I giving that justice? Because I've seen that. I don't know if that's what it's called, but it was to eliminate the vibration going into the bass drum, right? Or any of the vibration leaving the tom and going into whatever it's mounted to.
Well, right. And I have a newer Yamaha set that it basically, in my drums, the tom mounts go through a hole in the drum. It's like a metal rod that goes through each tom, that's part of the mount, so to speak. So what they did was, they've got the metal rod doesn't go through the drum. It's hard to explain, but it's different, and it's supposed to do what you said.
Yeah.
However,
like who the hell's going to know?
Well, come on, I don't even know. I mean, I still play those drums to this day. It's still my main drum set. I was just playing them a couple hours ago, getting ready for our first show in a couple days, and I have them set up in a room that they sound like freaking thunder. They sound amazing, and I've had them for like 35 years. You know what I mean?
Wow.
There are people out there that are gearheads, and there's nothing wrong with that. That I got to have this, and I got to try this, and I got to do this, and I got to do that, and that's fine. But I'm one of those people that when I go to a restaurant I eat the same food because I know what I like. You know what I mean? I don't want to mess with success.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
Yeah. So I still have that. I still have that set to this day, and the snare drum I bring out with Lou. Sometimes I'm like you guitar players, there'll be a flavor guitar of the month or a flavor snare drum of the week or whatever. But the drum I bring out and have been bringing out for the last, 6-7 months is a drum that's just as old as that. It's a Tama Superstar drum that's made out of rosewood. So it's really heavy.
Nice.
They only made it for a couple of years
because
and they've
there's
since reissued it.
It's an international what is it? The laws about bringing rosewood into the country. I'm sure
the CITES treaties. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
the drum now can't leave the country.
I know. Well, there's no way. There's so many times that we're supposed to be going down to freaking South America and play, which it never happens because of the sketchiness of the promoters. But I'm sitting there thinking, man, there's no way I'm bringing this stuff down there and have
you never bring it back.
Somebody hijack it.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
wow.
But
that's cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of the basics of the gear. So
that's cool, man. Now, do you have the? Because it's so funny how recording kind of dictated what the drummers were doing at the time, and it was always revolved around the snare drum. And for some reason, through the 80s and the early 90s, snare drums had to sound like a cannon going off. Right. It was like the bass drum was as dry as could be. You could almost hear the beater hitting the bass drum, and the snare drum would have so much decay on the reverb and the way that and I'd be like, that doesn't even sound like the same set, right? And the sound guy would be like, yeah, but listen to that snare drum, and I'd be like, take the fucking reverb off of that. I want it to sound exactly the same. And,
I'll tell you a quick funny story.
They used to get pissed at me for that.
That band I was on the road with in '89, the sound guy was right from that school. So I'm coming out, with my really nice, only 3 or 4 year old fucking Yamaha recording customs. They're getting schloffed around in a truck now, bounced from here to wherever. And he's like, his name is Billy. He was from somewhere down south. He goes, if you cut a hole in the bottom head, I could stick a mic up through that bottom hole and turn a bunch of reverb on it and sound like cannons, just like you're saying. Yeah. And I'm sitting there going, no fucking way am I doing that. And eventually, I don't know how he conned me into doing it, probably because he was older than me and I was still young and green at the time. But as soon as I did that, man, I tell you, that sucked the life out of the sound of the drums on stage as far as what I could hear. And, and I found myself hitting the drum harder to hear it because all of a sudden all the resonance and everything was gone from the drum because the hole that was cut in the bottom. But it's out in front of in the PA. Sure, it sounded great. It sounded like freaking thunder.
That's funny that you say that because the girls in Zepparella, they were playing up in Pennsylvania, and I don't know where these rednecks came from. The guys that were doing the sound. The guy took the bass drum microphone and stuck it inside of Clementine's drum. And every time she would hit it, because she's a heavy hitter, you had this weird, like, A note reverbing across the stage, and they couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, hey, you may want to pull the microphone out of the drum. I mean, it was in the drum.
Just laid it in there?
He just laid it in there, and it was getting, she would hit it, and it would hit that frequency, and I guess the drum was resonating.
Sure.
So the microphone started, and it was the weirdest thing, and they're, like, looking around at each other, like, what in the hell is that noise?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
wow.
There are miking systems for kick drums that guys like Tommy Aldridge and Simon Phillips have used for years where you actually mount the microphone in the drum, but
it's made for it.
It's done properly.
Yeah.
It's tuned properly.
Yeah. I'm sure the guy up in wherever the hell we were for that show, he didn't have the the $2,000 Newman that's made for that. Just a normal,
Yeah, he's just, winging it or whatever.
Throw a 57 inside.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So
you actually go out with like a 30-year-old kit?
Well, I don't bring my own drums. So when we go out and do shows, it's backline stuff. But I bring my own snare drum and I bring my own cymbals and my own kick drum pedal. Mm-hmm. And that's about it. The drum set, the rest of it's all backline stuff.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were still carting that around in a van somewhere, having some guys drive it from one gig to the next,
Well, it's happened just a handful of times. If we have a show we're driving to or we're not flying to, there's been a couple times for whatever reason I brought my own. I don't know if has to do with saving a couple bucks on backline or what the deal was, but they're like, since we're driving and we have our own trailer, you want to bring your own drums, and I'd love to use my own drums. The only downside of it is I don't trust any of the schmucks on stage afterwards to rip my drum set down. You know what I mean? So that means after a gig, when everybody else is having a beer and relaxing, Rob's on stage ripping his own drum set down.
You got to play your own roadie.
Yeah. So
I there's so many times I hear guitar players, they make the drummer jokes. You know how it is. It all goes back and forth. But I tell you, I feel for you guys because, my old drummer, Gary, I used to help him load in and load out and everything. And it's like drummers are kind of like the bastard children of bands because they're like, well, we got 2 bands playing tonight and they need to use your drum set. And it's like, really? Yep. And it's a weird thing because the drummer's supposed to go, yeah, go ahead. But if somebody said to the guitar player, hey, your $5,000 PRS, the guy opening, he needs to use that. Now, don't worry about it. He's going to use your whole rig and then hand it to you with his crotch sweat on it. And then you got to go play a set. And it's so weird how drummers are like, no, we got to do this. And then the guy, you don't know if the guy's going to beat the shit out of it or not. Yeah. And, they go, well, you bring your snare and your cymbals. It's like, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, that's part of it, but I tell you what, I mean, I try not to, I used to do that, and I don't remember the last time I had to do that, but it's I mean, the first thing, of course, is just like you just said, somebody beating the shit out of your stuff, right? I actually had a guy crack one of my cymbals. I'm like, dude, all right, let's split the cost on this because, I've been beating on it for a couple of years, but you fucking broke it. So, we need to go in, at least give me half. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
And then the other thing with drums is the unwritten rule is if you're using somebody else's drum set, you don't beat the fuck out of their heads. Which I've done, unfortunately, because I hit so hard. But number two, you don't really move anything because in drums, everything is physical and you're playing with muscle memory, right? So, if somebody's using I had a guy use my set once a long time ago, and I just assumed, that he kind of knew this rule, and I stepped away from my drum set. I come back 20 minutes after getting a drink or whatever I was, and the guy has half my drum set ripped apart. I'm sitting there, what the fuck is this guy doing? You don't do that, Wow. I mean, if you want to angle the snare in a little bit more, that's fine, but you're not going to, you know what I mean? So, it kind of sucks being a drummer for that stuff. So.
I doubt that you have to do it much anymore.
Yeah.
So.
No, thank God.
Well, and here's the thing also, and drums are not cheap. And if you buy good ones, the hardware, I love the hardware prices because the hardware is like, wow, I'm buying a whole nother drum set. To put the drum on the thing that I got. Okay, so that's how that works. And then you got to buy cases, and cases are like, they're asked because you can buy the bags, but buying the bag, you may as well just take the drum and kick it down the road. So you got to buy the hard shell case, and then it's like, wow, I'm buying a guitar case for every single drum, single drum I own, and then the hardware.
Well, I tell you what, when not too far after buying or getting, I didn't buy it, my parents did, but that Yamaha set, right before I did that gig that required me to leave and go on the road, I went to the local store here and had custom anvil flight cases made for everything.
Oh, God.
So, and I still have those, too.
Of course you do. Why would you get rid of something like that? That might cost you a fortune.
I got the drums. I got to have the cases. But schlepping them around town, doing a cover gig, I can't use those cases. I need a van to bring them up. So I use bags for that kind of stuff. But when we do use my set for Lou Gramm gigs, I tell Bob, our tech guy, I said, he's trying to save room for all this stuff. And I'm like, well, we're putting in my flight cases. And sometimes he's giving me shit about it. And I go, dude, they're going to be sawdust by the time we get to fucking Pennsylvania. I go, unless Lou Gramm wants to buy me a brand new recording custom set, which I'm all for, these are going in the flight case.
Yeah, but it's not going to be your kit from 30 years ago.
Right. And they're not they don't make them in Japan anymore. They stopped making them. So you're right.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same. Right.
You're right.
Yeah. So let's go. You mentioned Lou a couple of times. Let's go through some band progressions and figure out how you got there, because that's a pretty damn cool gig.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of got some cool. I'll try to. I could be long-winded sometimes, but I'll try and keep it to the point.
Man. No.
So I after that road gig, I did the local cover thing here, and I was actually in a band in the early '90s with two guys that ended up going to play guitar for Overkill throughout the mid to late '90s. Right, and we were in a band called Ramrod, and we signed a deal with Mausoleum Records, which was in Europe at the time. And when they were about to give us the money to record our record, they gave it all to Joey Belladonna from Anthrax instead, who was recording his first solo record. So
that went well for him.
Yeah, right. I was back at Anthrax. Yeah, exactly. But so that fell through. They got the offer to join Overkill, and so they're off touring the world, and Rob's left sitting at home. I'm like, okay, now what the fuck do I do? So anyways, I eventually, a couple years later, I did a record that came out in Japan in '97. It was a band called Thick as Thieves, and it was kind of like a Dokken meets Extreme type of music. And
I remember the name.
I'll have to say, the stuff I Dropboxed you last week or whatever was the Ramrod stuff.
Yeah,
but I'll have to Dropbox you the Thick as Thieves disc because it's really, really good. The guitar player, guy's name is John Hahn. He was on Mike Varney's Spotlight column back a while ago, and he's really good. I'll get you that stuff.
You're not getting on there if you're a slouch.
No,
that's
not at all.
For sure.
He's phenomenal. And so I did that record, but at the time, grunge was still kind of happening. That whole '90s, thing was happening, which I was never a big fan of, other than like Pantera and Stone Temple Pilots. I wasn't much of a fan of anything from that era, so it didn't sell too well because of that. But anyways, long story short, in 2000, I was in a band briefly called Liege Lord, and they were on Metal Blades Records, and they got an offer to reform and go play the Wacken Open Air Festival, which is the biggest, metal festival even today. I mean, it's like a 3-4 day thing in a weekend in August, and everybody comes from all over the world to go to that every year. And so we played that, and I did some recording with them, and then that kind of fell apart. And right around that time where it kind of gets really interesting is Mike and I started a band in the early 2000s that was a Foreigner tribute band, and it was only meant to be together for a charity that Lou was doing with his old band Black Sheep that I was telling you about way back in the beginning, that he was the drummer of. And funnily enough, for that show, Lou wanted all the drummers to use his original drum set, some big monstrous concert Tom Ludwig set that he had when he was a kid. So we played the show, and it went over really well, and we decided to keep that band going. And for about 4 years, 3-4 years it went, and it also included Lou's nephew, Peter Grammatico, as our singer, who sounded, unfortunately he's passed away, but he sounded eerily a lot like a younger Lou.
Wow.
And who was in that band was almost everybody who was in Lou's band. It was me. It was Mike. It was Andy Knoll, our keyboard player, who was in Lou's band up until last year. He was the keyboard player in Lou's band for about 12 years. So almost everybody in that band ended up, ironically, in Lou's band later on. So
and Mike is Michael Sterto.
Yeah, Mike Sterto.
Yeah, because we interviewed him, and our listeners may not know what you're saying.
Yeah, which Mike you're referencing.
Take for granted. All right, Michael Sterto.
There you go. Now that we have that cleared up.
Oh, we got that cleared up. So anyways, as that was coming to a close, Lou started his solo band, and at the time it comprised of Andy, that I just mentioned, on keyboards, and then his two brothers and another friend of his that was in Black Sheep, and they started playing. And slowly over time, they, because his brother Ben was the drummer. Lou's older brother Ben was his drummer, but he lived in New York while everybody else was in Rochester. So every once in a while, I get a phone call saying, hey, we need to practice. I forget what it was about, but you want to come down and practice in Lou's studio. Hey, well, who wouldn't want to do that? So I would go down to the studio here in Rochester and run through whatever they wanted to run through. I got another call, hey, we're re-recording some Foreigner songs because we need them for promotional purposes and we can't use the original recordings. Do you want to come drum on it? Okay, sure. I'll go record some Foreigner songs. And then the last thing I did before I really joined the band back in 2009, on 3 days' notice, I get a phone call, and Ben, his drummer, his brother, got sick and ended up in the hospital. And we got a gig in Big Bear, California. This is on July 4th of that year. And I had already had a trip planned with my wife at the time and my kids to go to Boston for a holiday. And they're like, can you come do this gig? And I'm like, I initially turned it down like a fucking dumbass.
Oh,
and then I talked to my wife at the time. I'm like, I know we got a trip, and I know you got to drive to Boston now. All by yourself with the kids, but I'm going to California. I have to do this, and she was cool about it. And
that's awesome.
Well, that's an
I
awesome
did it on 3
wife
days'
there.
notice.
Wow.
Now the good thing is I already knew all the songs because I was in a Foreigner tribute band for 3 years. So there's only there was only like 2 songs I needed to learn that we didn't play. That I had to learn for that gig. And it was funny. I when I got to California, I was going to sit in the hotel room and chart it all out. And I went looking. It's like a vacation town. And I went looking for a pad of paper and something to write on. And I couldn't find anything. Nothing was open. I ended up in a liquor store buying a pad of paper and some Spider-Man markers to write my notes on. That's all I could find.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh,
as hell.
man, that's hilarious. So you mentioned chart it out. Do you read charts? Do you learn things basically like that, or do you learn things basically by ear? And if somebody throws a chart in front of you, you can run with that.
Well, that's actually a great question because I grew up listening or reading music when I went to the Eastman and to college and all that stuff. So I can read music, but since when I left college, I immediately pretty much stopped reading music at that time. Now, if somebody gives me, kind of to answer your questions, I could chart things out written normally, like a schooled person could read it, but I kind of do a mishmash of real writing and my own stupid nonsense. So I know what I'm looking at. I might say chorus and draw something out and say repeat 3 times or, just it's a combination of all that. However, when I learn music, whenever somebody wants me to record with them or I get a gig or whatever, I would much rather, and this is what I do, I download it into my iPad or my phone, and I will listen to it all day, every day, even in my sleep, to ingrain it in my subconscious, because I don't want to be the guy sitting there reading a chart if I don't have to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
I would rather have it ingrained in my brain so I know it in and out, and just have notes just in case, but
sure.
Yeah, I'd listen to it and listen to it.
Doesn't and forgive me if I get his last name wrong, but isn't it Kenny Aronoff or
Yep.
Yeah.
Aronoff.
Yeah, he writes out because he's in the that movie what's it called? Hired Gun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how he writes out everything, and then he was on Corolla's show the other day, and he was talking about how he, he'll sit down and write that stuff out, and he was like showing them, and they're like, "What is that?"
Well, he has to. He has to. And there are guys like him and Rich Redmond who are guys that are always doing different gigs and different recordings. And the reason they have to do that is because there's no way in hell they'd remember all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't have time. They're on to the next thing tomorrow. They have to sit there and chart it out and do that way. Even Kenny admitted it himself. I met him in the LA airport a couple years ago when we played Los Angeles, and we were sitting there shooting the shit with him in the airport. And he's like, I gotta chart this stuff out. I can't remember because he works so hard. He works so much.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well,
Rob, did you ever come into a situation where somebody gave you some charts and gave you the music, and you listened to the music and you listened to it and you fell asleep to it and you woke up with it and you get to the gig and you're playing it exactly like it's recorded, and they said, "That's not how we charted it out. We don't play like that anymore."
Well, not exactly like this, but funnily enough, when I got the gig with Lou, I did, I didn't have to chart it out because, again, I got a good memory, so I remembered all the stuff from playing it back in the tribute band. Mm-hmm. And even though I can remember that stuff, I couldn't tell you what my wife told me 5 minutes ago, unfortunately, but I can remember everything musically. She's going to kill me for that, but she knows it's true. So the first rehearsal, we got done playing, and I went up to Lou and I go, hey, what'd you think? You cool with all this? Is everything, cool? And he looked at me, goes, yeah. He goes, but there's just one thing. And I'm like, oh shit, here it comes. And he goes, that part and feels like the first time, which I'll explain. There's a part right before the chorus. It's like the last part of the verses where Dennis Elliott, the original drummer, will kind of give a disco type of feel on the hi-hat where it's like a, you'd have to go back and listen to it. Lou goes, that part and feels like the first time. I go, yeah. He goes, don't do that. I always fucking hated that. So, here I am thinking he wants it just like the record.
Right.
And I played it so much like the record, it brought back parts he hated from the record.
I never did like that. No.
Exactly.
That's hilarious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is so wild, man.
That's great.
And to hear Lou Gramm say fuck.
Well, I might have over embellished there, but he does once in a while pass a swear word. I know he's kind of known now these days as being a Christian, and I'm sure he has his own beliefs and all that stuff, but it's cool to hear him every once in a while throw out a swear word,
and what's neat is when I was in high school, I played baseball, right? And because this story will tie around, believe me. And I had an opportunity. A friend of mine worked at the ballpark doing slow-mo instant replays for the local sports channels. And one day he said, hey, come on down. You can see everything. You can do all behind the scenes. And I was like, hell yeah, man. So I go down, and it was a rain delay. And there's Jim Palmer, right? Hall of Fame freaking right. Jim Palmer, Mr. Rubber, the guy could throw 3 games in a row, the complete games, whatever. And they had the history or the goddamn geographic channel on, right? And 2 iguanas are getting it on. And Jim Palmer turns around. He goes, hey, look, it's 2 iguanas fucking. And I went, Jim Palmer just said fuck.
Yeah. Well,
hey.
Then he threw a baseball at the screen.
I just thought, wow, that was, and of course, he does. He's just normal like everybody else, but it was just one of those things,
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny how you meet some people. Some people, they always say you don't want to meet your heroes because, a lot of times you could be disappointed. In a lot of cases, there are a bunch of jerks out there, but there are some real cool guys.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one thing everybody will say about Lou. Lou is the most down-to-earth, coolest, regular, non-ego dude. And, if you could sit down with him and chat about muscle cars, he'd love you forever. What I mean? He's just a regular dude.
Nick.
That'll be my other podcast.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mick and Lou talk cars.
But when once in a while, it's funny to watch him, get a little, I don't know what the word would be, rambunctious or whatever. But when he really gets into something and he'll let a shit slip or whatever. I don't know. It's just, I probably shouldn't even be saying this. You probably should just strike this completely before I lose my gig. But anyways, Lou is such a great, straight-laced person.
So at the July 4th gig that you had 3 days notice for.
Yes.
Was that the beginning of Okay, You're In?
No, I didn't get in for many years afterwards because, his brother, well, fortunately, I would say unfortunately got better. So he got his gig back. I can't be mean-spirited. Of course, he came back. It was never my gig. It was just a fill-in. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So, but, over time, Andy, the keyboard player, was in the band the whole time. So I knew Andy. And then our bass player, AD, was the first replacement. He replaced Lou's brother, Dickie. So AD got in. So, okay, there's another buddy of mine in the band. And then Mike, Michael Sterto, he got the gig replacing the guitar player. So all of a sudden, all my friends are in the band. The only guy left is Lou and his brother Ben. And I'm thinking, well, secretly I always hoped, it's like, come on, man, something happened so I could get in there. You don't wish ill to anybody, but
of course not.
Yeah.
But then part of me did, because I wanted the game. But so Ben left a few years ago, and I got the call. Finally, it's like, oh,
nice.
Cool. So, and here I am. So.
And you now play behind plexiglass.
Oh God, I hate that shit. Yeah. Well,
there was a texting thing that went back and forth between.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Mike and Rob were texting me, and we were setting everything up, and all I had to say is, Rob looks like a dog on display at PetSmart.
Oh my God!
And Mike just took it and went with it, and I just was like, "Wow, I'm sorry, I really said that. I didn't mean to trigger that."
Oh yeah, give him an in. He'll sit there and crush me.
Oh my God!
Now, does it knock you out being behind that thing? Because I know that it's very amplified back at you.
Well, first of all, I've had screens myself in the past because everybody's complained I was too loud. So it's not really anything new.
Yeah.
However, the main reason we use it, and it wasn't just me, I mean, his brother Ben played behind it too, is because Lou's in-ears the frequencies that he needs are a lot of the higher end frequencies, and a lot of live sound is how he likes it. And so, the drums and especially the cymbals, if I didn't have that screen, they would go right into his microphone that he's singing in, and right into his ears and totally destroy his brain probably. He just plus he can't have that.
It's a little bit harder out front too when because if one of the guitar player steps to the side or anybody steps to the side and that mic is hot and you don't have that, it's so funny how that works, because you could take your head and turn it to the side of the microphone and you could barely be heard, but that cymbal will go 30 feet and hit that thing and be like you just had it right next to it. So I mean, it is for that reason, but it is kind of, I don't know, it's like intrusive almost, well, we have this guy back here.
Well, it sucks because nobody can get a good picture of me, So it's always glare and stuff,
exactly.
But it doesn't affect me hearing anything because I use in-ears, so it doesn't affect me. Now, sometimes once in a blue moon, especially when I was using earbuds before in ears, I would leave one out because I always wanted to hear the natural sound of the drums. I just want to hear what the drums really sound like, not through processing in the microphones.
Sure.
But the funny thing is, we were playing a gig in Vegas a couple years ago with Pat Benatar, and it was so windy. They had to, I don't remember what they did. They had to freaking secure that screen like you wouldn't believe, because it was swaying in the wind. And I'm sitting there going, well, where's my fucking football helmet so it doesn't come down and knock me out?
You're like Tom Hanks in Castaway with the outhouse. It just takes off.
That's about it. I swear to God, I thought that thing was coming down 20 times on me.
Wow.
But the thing that really stinks is, other than, can't get a good picture of me, of course, is 2 years ago, it was like the hottest summer ever. Every day was 90 degrees, right? And like really humid. Yeah. And we did a lot of outdoor shows.
And you get no wind.
So I get no breeze. And then when the lights come on, the sun goes down, the lights are on, I'm getting cooked like a freaking chicken in a microwave, and not getting a breeze. So the lights are hammering me, in addition to no breezes, getting back to Robbo here. And dude, I swear to God, I don't know how I didn't pass out, back there, because everybody else is out there. Mike's hair's blowing in the wind like Pat Travers. Everybody's getting a breeze, and I'm back there freaking melting.
No fan? They didn't give a drummer a fan?
Well, eventually I did get a fan. I had to have a fan, but then if you watch any of my drum cam videos on my YouTube page, it's blowing my hair in my mouth and I can't see. And I got allergies that are so bad is whenever I have a fan on me, my eyes start watering out of control. God. So just imagine, I would rather just melt.
I just love the Pat Travers reference, because we saw him at Club 66 and he had that fan on.
Oh, yeah.
He always has that face.
Yeah, totally. Well, I can see maybe Rob in the next couple of years with a Simmons endorsement or something.
Yeah.
Enough of the acoustic drums. Take down the screen. I want the breeze. I need a good picture. I got to change drums.
Exactly.
It's hilarious.
Well, Pearl now makes a kit that looks like a real drum set. I mean, it's more of a real drum set than even the roll-in stuff, and it's completely digital. It costs as much as a car.
Yeah,
but it's they call it their their tour series for digital drums, and they put like a ton of R&D into it. And I can see that if you want to have a clean stage and you don't want to have the plexiglass, that would be something. But that's a whole other thing you have to get used to as a drummer. I mean, when you hit something and it doesn't make noise, as opposed to when you hit it and it,
Yeah.
I mean, they're getting closer with all that stuff. But it's
as much about the feel of it too.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, I haven't played any newer stuff lately, but I've had older stuff in the past. And it's like hitting not quite like hitting a piece of concrete, but it's just there's no give to the stuff I've played, and so the bounce and the feel and the whole 9 yards.
Well, the new is completely different. The new Roland, I think it's the TD50. That thing's coming in like at $12,000, but it is. It is a beast. I mean, it really, and Roland is always going to be the guys on the cutting edge. They're always going to have the latest, technology into it. Mm-hmm. And it's, you watch one of those demos and you're going, man, these guys are doing just the lightest taps on the hi-hat. And, now it's pressure sensitive. So you push down harder on the foot controller, it actually tightens the cymbals just like it would in real, with real cymbals. I mean,
sure.
It's amazing what they've been able to do,
I bet breaking one of those cymbals is twice as expensive as breaking a real one.
Oh yeah, and when one of those triggers goes south, it is bad. Yeah, because it's like you get double hits. You get sometimes you don't get a hit. It can be kind of unnerving,
Well, it's just what can go wrong will go wrong, And as far as I'm concerned, a regular analog live drum that's been the instrument since the first inhabitants of the earth beating on their tablas or whatever, it's kind of, I mean, shit can go wrong with that, trust me, but it's a lot less than some sort of electronic thing, and I don't know, just call me old fashioned. There's nothing that could beat the sound of a nice drum set tuned up really good. And, just the feel and, I don't know.
True.
We agree. I mean, we talk 100%. About the amp, the real amps versus the virtual stuff. And, of course, the airlines have kind of dictated to everybody what they can take. And, so you got a lot of guys carrying their stuff in a bag. But, when they go in the studio 9 times out of 10, it's, they're moving air and, it's just, you can't, like I said, there's something visceral and organic about that you can capture it at one instance, one focal point of it. But amplifiers especially, they do funky stuff, and that 30-year-old drum set, you buy the new one, it won't sound like it because that wood is 30 years of doing whatever you've done to it.
Absolutely.
Just like a guitar,
and the saying is, a lot of times they don't make it like they used to, in a lot of cases. Yeah, it's not true in every case, but in a lot of cases it's true, but I hear you, I mean, for touring purposes, guitar players got to bring, something that's compact or whatever, because they're not bringing their own amplifiers, and you can't bring that on a plane and
right.
And when we bring stuff on a plane, it's always funny watching those guys hurl the shit on the conveyor.
Yeah, that is so unnerving. That is so unnerving.
It's like it's an Olympic sport with those guys. They're trying to see who can throw the shit the farthest.
I like the part that people. Here's what gets me. I heard somebody complaining the other day at their job, and I'm going, "You're employed." I mean, just think about that. You actually can bring home a paycheck, and you're bitching about that. And it's like, you're working at the airport. That job is as hard, it's just like becoming a fireman or a mail carrier. You got to go through, 18 years of background checks. And these guys are like pissed that you brought luggage.
Right. God damn you.
Yeah. I see guys actually pick it up to throw it down. It's like, why? Why are you so angry at people's luggage?
It was then time for the bounce contest.
Cymbals don't bounce, trust me.
The cymbals don't bounce. So speaking of touring and recording, what's in the future for you and the Lou Gramm organization there?
Okay, well, we are starting out as far as the band gigs that Lou does. We start out this weekend in Indio, California, and we're playing with Foghat, and it's called the Riverside County Fair, I think it's billed as. And so, yeah, this is our first gig as the band with Lou since December of last year. He does, starting with last year and continuing this year, you know, we have gigs with him, the band, so to speak, and then he has other things he does, such as that other little band called Foreigner or something like that he does. No, he did some shows with them last year. I know that they've announced that there's going to be some stuff later in this year. I don't know any details, but he also does a thing called the Rock Pack with other singers. So, you know, we do kind of the plan, I guess, is for us to do a couple gigs a month, and he fills in time with his other stuff that he's doing. So if it was up to me, of course, I wish we were playing all the gigs because I would play every day of the week if it was up to me. You know, I love doing it. And I even told Lou I'd play two gigs a day every day of the year. If he could do it, I'll do it, you know, but
And we must mention the passing of Craig McGregor, the bassist from Foghat.
Yeah, he hasn't been with them the past couple of years, but yes,
he was there in '75, went all the way, I think, to the '80s, then left to be with his family, and then came back, and was one of the original core guys. And he just passed away. It's like, man, just
they're all dropping. Yeah.
Every time we turn around, it's just weird.
Yeah,
man.
for sure.
We played with them about a year and a half ago down in Mississippi, and he wasn't with them then either. Yeah. It was I don't remember the guy's name was with him. He was a real cool guy. But Roger Earl really is the only original guy, the drummer. And, so he's a cool guy. I'm looking forward to playing with them again. When we did that gig in Mississippi, towards the end they came out and were watching our set, and I looked over at my floor toms and I see Roger there watching me play, and all of a sudden as I sit there and make eye contact with him and smiling and stuff, and all of a sudden a stick goes flying out of my hands up into the light truss, and he's laughing at me, and I'm like, come on, I'm embarrassed as hell. This guy, he's a legend. He's watching me lose my drumsticks.
Made me lose concentration.
Yeah, that damn Roger Earl, you fucked me up, man. I'm gonna get you back this weekend.
Well, at least it wasn't Ginger Baker.
Go on stage and stare at him. Just stare.
You got to
throw shit at him.
You got to do the arms crossed. Just look at it.
Yeah, there you go. Wow.
Well, man, I'm telling you, this has been this is all, and our first drummer, and we're going to get many more because this is awesome.
Drummers
stuff.
are funny.
Hell yeah, they are.
Dudes. That's right.
Yeah,
and they have rhythm.
Literally the backbone of the band.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without them, it's just guitarists jerking off.
I mean, a great rhythm. Yeah, a great rhythm section. A drummer and a bass player. As a guitar player, it just makes it easier to play.
Oh my God, it's like a playground. Does. It is literally like a playground when you have two guys that can hold that bottom end, and especially a good drummer. Drummers that can kind of read that groove, and when you're kind of like improvising, that is by far the greatest thing you will ever have as a guitar player in your band. That's why good drummers are never unemployed.
Well, I mean, I can't beat the horn for drummers too much, but it's the truth because we're the guys that keep the time. You know what I mean? We're the guys that lay it down, and if you're playing with a drummer that's just guessing back there and has no concept of time, good luck.
Now, do you play with a click, or do they let you kind of? Yes. Oh, so you run on a click from the keyboard player, right? Is that how that works? Or
yeah. Basically, I mean. We don't have to, but we do because you're competing out there with so many other bands that use all this pre-recorded shit. And I won't, list names. We all know people who, half of what you hear up there isn't played live on the stage.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess before I joined the band, they decided to go with a click because there are a little bit of background vocals that are used in cases of throw and goes. Like if you're setting up and you're on stage and you got to sound good from second one,
you know what, man? Look, what Lou has survived, he gets a pass without a doubt. It's
well,
just
but
the way
it's not
it
even
is.
him.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but
it's
just the band. It's his name on there. What the hell? He can do whatever the hell he wants. It's Lou Gramm.
Well, right. But I'll tell you, all the guys in the band sing live, so we really don't need that. It's just in the case, like I said, for a throw and go, if we need a little enhancement. And I know Jeff, our keyboard player, Jeff Jacobs, who was in Foreigner for like 15 years, he's really mastered all the old sounds and the old programming. And I know there's a couple of parts I think that he puts in there. So I got to play to a click to keep all that straight. I don't like to do it because none of that stuff was recorded with a click. So, when you listen back to it, it kind of flows like most of those records did back then. But I kind of have to because of this. But I'll tell you two funny, really quick stories. There's two really quick stories with the click. So we were playing last year in Illinois, and I don't know if the heat got to the computer or what, but I got done with my drum solo. I'm freaking, trying to towel off, and Jeff starts the click track for Dirty White Boy, right? Which is the next song after my drum solo. Yeah. And Dirty White Boy kind of counts off as like, Dirty White Boy, click, 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 right? So all of a sudden, I this is what I hear. Instead of 4 click, I get 4 clicks and then I count 4 for the guys. So what I hear instead of click, 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 I hear click, click.
What?
Click. And I'm looking down at I'm trying to chug some water because I just sweated every drop of moisture out of my body. And all of a sudden I'm in panic mode. I'm looking down at the set list, go, what the fuck is the next song?
It's the slow version of
the Dirty Old Boy is what it is.
Well, here's what I learned how to do. You learn really quick. So if that confuses me, like what's the next song? What am I missing? I know what to do. I'll click 4 for everybody according to that tempo, and then hit a crash cymbal, and then wait for a split second to see what everybody starts playing, and then it's like, oh, that song.
I love it.
So that's my out. But so we started playing, and we're playing it like half speed, and everybody's looking at me, waving their hands, going, come on, pick it up. And Lou's looking at me like, what the fuck are you smoking? Get going. And I'm shrugging, like, what am I supposed to do? I'm playing to the click, and I'm yelling to Jeff, turn it off. Now, he didn't turn it off. And I don't know if anybody out there has ever tried this, but try playing drums against the click track.
Oh, man.
It had to be deadly.
Dude, here's the best part of the whole thing. Some guy recorded the whole fucking thing and put it up on Facebook the next day. Out of all the songs he could have put up there, it's Dirty White Boy. So I've got the recording of it, of course, because I record all our shows, but I saw his, and I'm like, oh, my God, they're going to think we're smoking dope. And who gets blamed but me, right?
The drummer.
Now, you don't have a dump? You don't have a dump button that you – because, like, I've heard that a lot of drummers have that when the click, when everything gets off, they can just hit the button, everything dumps, and it's back to live.
Well, maybe those are drummers that probably are the ones, instigating the click track. I don't do it.
Oh.
Jeff does it.
Oh,
so
you got to get that dump.
I need it. I never thought I'd hear myself say I need a dump, but yeah, I need a dump.
Yeah, man, you got to kill that. You got to be. I mean, that would drive me crazy. That's sort of like what they say. You can't speak if you're wearing headphones and you hear yourself on a 1 second delay.
Oh yeah,
like you can't talk.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And there'll be times, where Lou will come in a little later than normal, especially in might be Hot Blooded or Jukebox Hero or something. He'll wait and let it go around another time, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh God. Turn the fucking click off because everything's programmed to go in. You know what I mean? Like background vocals are going to come in at the wrong time, and
everything's off by a measure or two now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the worst part too is not to knock him too much, but he goes up there sometimes and he's whacking the cowbell right along to the beat, like Jukebox. He's up there doing the solo and he's hitting the cowbell, and he don't hear the click. So sometimes he'll get off. So I got the click going in one ear, his cowbell in the other ear, and neither of them are together.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah, you need a dump button, buddy. You need to be able to hit that button.
It ain't nothing if it ain't fun.
Oh,
it ain't
my
nothing
God.
if it ain't. Wow.
Never a dull moment.
That's awesome,
great.
man.
That is great. Well, we're gonna look for the train wreck if it heads into the northeast.
Hey, I got a bloopers video on my YouTube channel, so if anybody wants to go, just look under my name, Rob Mount, on YouTube. I put together a video.
Is it on your website?
No, YouTube. Not on my website, which, by the way, is me, www.robmount.com. But you can get to my social media from my website, including my YouTube channel.
Because that'll sit on our website under the episode in
perpetuity.
That's right. And then we're going to put it out in the archives, and you guys can go out there and definitely check out all of his stuff. And, because he needs love and he needs an endorsement, God damn it.
Well, I got a few, which I should probably mention. But
okay, yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I should give a shout out to Regal Tip Sticks, who provide the sticks, which is a great company that actually is about an hour away from me in Niagara Falls, New York. So they're not too far away, and they make some awesome sticks that I break very frequently, but still are very good. And JH Audio in-ears, Jerry Harvey Audio, great. I'm so glad I got those. I got about a year ago. They sound amazing, so I got to give a shout out to them. And then lastly, JC Clifford from Drum Tax, which is a company that makes these little circular pad type discs that you stick on your heads that do a great job of, get rid of overtones and ringing and things like that.
Dead ringers, right? Like dead ringers.
Well,
sort of.
Yeah, there's different styles of stuff like that, and they do it differently. He could tell you why it's so much different than the other ones, but they do a really good job. So.
Yeah, cool.
Nice.
So so we'll work on getting Rob a drum endorsement.
Well, Yamaha needs to know I've been playing their shit for 35 years.
There you go. So anybody works for Yamaha that's listening to the show, come on, man.
And they have to. You mentioned Roland, and we can wrap this up. But you mentioned Roland. Yamaha, I think, probably has the biggest wallet for technology. Quite honestly.
Oh yeah, they're the biggest company in Japan.
They have the biggest wallet, period, because musical instruments are just a small part of what they do.
Hey,
sure.
You can ride one of them in the water and on the highway.
You can generate electricity with the Yamaha. You can cut your lawn with a Yamaha. There's so many Yamaha products. It's ridiculous.
If I'm not mistaken, I think they are the biggest Japanese manufacturer in the country, Japan.
Yeah.
They make a ton of stuff, man, and they do it well. All their stuff is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean,
including 30-year-old drums. So
absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Look at
that.
Well,
Rob, go ahead.
I was just going to say, look at that.
Oh, okay. No, Rob, thank you very much for taking the time. Good luck on the beginning of the touring season.
Thank you.
And we hope you're around the Maryland area sometime soon, because we'd love to come out and say hi and check out the show, man. I'm sure it's killer.
Oh yeah.
Well, thanks very much. I really appreciate you guys having me on as having the honor of the first non-musician.
Hey, man, don't sell yourself short, okay?
Man, I just shot my fellow drummers and myself on the foot by saying that.
It's all good, man. It's all good. It was fun.
All right, guys.
Thanks a lot. Have a great one, mate. Safe travels.
All right, guys. Thanks very much. We'll catch you later.
Thanks,
man. Bye.
And there you have the story.
Oh man, what a great guy.
Totally.
And it's so funny because excuse me, when we got into the conversation and I said you have to mention Mike's last name, is because we sat at the airport for it was like an hour talking to those guys.
It was totally fun hanging out with those guys at the airport.
At the end of NAMM. And, I've been in contact with Rob and Mike through texting. And every now and then you just get this random text from one of those two. And it's one of the things that I go, man, this is the coolest thing that I've ever pursued since ever getting into music. Because when I get a text from Greg Mara or Michael or Rob, it's like, well, that's pretty badass. That's like these guys are playing with Lou Gramm. That would be like Howard Leese getting a hold of me because he plays with Paul Rogers. And
totally.
Yeah, I will put Lou in that category because Lou, Foreigner, they're...
Oh, no, it's another one of those iconic, recognizable voices, for sure.
Exactly. And Foreigner
100%.
was a powerhouse band back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Man. I mean, they were doing what everybody else was doing that was on the radio, and that was big arenas and making it happen.
Oh, yeah.
So,
100%.
Yeah. So that's a cool thing, and just love those guys. But man, he is so funny.
and just so we're just so we etch this in stone, he will forever be known as Michael Sterto.
I love it, man.
Rob, thank you so much for that. It was a blast.
Just a total fun time, man.
Yep.
Well, so until next time, my friend.
That's right, because it'll be a total fun time again.
That's right. I'm Mick Marcelino.
That's right, and I'm total fun time Jeff Cole.
We're always saying.
Onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @AmpsandAxes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.